So when I speak of bullying, and it doesn't usually happen in a vacuum. In fact, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It usually is a natural outgrowth of a rigged system and systemic abuse of power. And I've experienced this personally, and it's really nauseating. We can't have it because people tolerate it. It festers to the point where all of a sudden they're doing such heinous acts because they've gotten away with so much previous. The best example, of course, is Nazi Germany, when in 1935 they came out with the Nuremberg laws, which were discriminatory towards Jews. And there was many demeaning situations there where before the full-on Holocaust and the extermination and the death camps took place, where and I think this artwork can show this, where it was just all of a sudden they had a system in place where they didn't like somebody, they didn't like the Jews, the Third Reich that was their theme, and they were going to treat them differently, and they did it incrementally. So they started with these crazy Nuremberg laws, and here you can see an example of a Nazi just berating a Jew, and I've experienced that, and it's very upsetting because someone will say to you point blank to your face, you're this person, we're going to do this, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you get into a system like that, and of course you can't believe it. I'll tell you a little joke, and it's tough to make a Holocaust joke, but I think it's in good taste because it goes to the idea of how the rigged system works. And we saw it again in Selma, in the film where they talk about the civil rights, taking the civil rights of the American African American. And in that film where they had no chance of winning, the rigged system, we'll name all the judges, they said. Well, horseshit, nobody can name all the judges, they were trying to pass that citizen's test. So a Jew in Nazi Germany, and right after the laws of Nuremberg in the 35 are employed, and he says to his wife, well, I'm going to meet with the Germans. And so, well, geez, that's going to be tough, honey. We're concerned. Don't worry, honey. I fought in the First World War, he said. I was a decorated soldier. I got the Iron Cross, and I was saving many Wehrmacht soldiers in the trenches in the Western Front, and there's no way they're going to subjugate me with this. So he went into the meeting, and he explained that to the Nazi, who was systemically just wasn't going to have anything to do with the Jew because that's what they did. So he said, well, good to meet you. I won the Iron Cross, and the German was like, 9. I was in the mustard attacks. I saved many. 9. And see, he said, well, I'm a loyal German. 9. So he came back to his wife and he said, I didn't go anywhere. All I got was 9, 9, and 9. I said, well, nobody can get a perfect 10. You see, maybe Nadia Comaneci, but nobody gets this perfect 10. And if they have a system that is so impossible for you to succeed at, they're just going to crush you. And that becomes normal for them. And I've seen that with dyslexia, where I've had teachers who were just so systemically against me, and then they're looking for things to fit. There's an expression, if you have a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail. I had a teacher who was just dreadful because I can't spell to save my life. But I was killing it in physics, and I knew, my dreams were my ticket out. Welcome back. I wanted to do well in school. I went to a boarding school to overcome my dyslexia, and then I went to a good public high school to matriculate, and I went to AP Physics so I could get into a great college like CC. So I was killing it in physics, but I couldn't spell. So I'm up at the board, and I was diagramming physics, capacitors, flow, and current. And I said, it goes into the blue, and then it comes out of the black, and I couldn't spell blue for my life. It was B-L-U-E, B-L-U, B-L-W. She said, go to the principal's office. Well, they just hated me because they thought I was fucking around because they didn't get me. And then they were systemically against me because I was doing a better job demonstrating the physics than the teacher, but then I came across that stumbling block. So if somebody doesn't like you and doesn't get you, they're going to come down on you, and of course we can't have that because that's the stepping stone for more harshness and more harshness. you have to call them out because, quite frankly, um, before I went into a great boarding school, I was suicidal over this horse shit. And, I was getting it from both ends. And here you can see what I call a death camper, not being irreverent, but you can see the light drawing, and he's throwing himself onto a barbed wire fence. And in that regard, he felt hopeless and desperate because of this beratement. And this is a physical desperation, but in mental health, you have a mental desperation, which is, as I say, it hurts as much as a shot to the nutsack. And we have to talk about that because you can't have a situation where this is happening. And it's the business with the cocksuckers. And the best way to do is to address it and say, let them own it up to live it down. And here's what what happened with the liberation of the death camps was, everybody in the town was, using this soap made out of dead humans, and they had a special name for it. And they knew what was going on, but they said, no, we don't know anything about that. They were playing the horses blind eye bullshit. So the liberating allies marched to these locals through the camp and said, no, this is what's going on here. Deal with it in your face. And to that degree, we have to do that with this type of horseshit that's going on. When someone is known to pull Jedi mind tricks or physically or mentally abusive, you must call them out. Rex Tillerson just did that in the White House, and he said, that's demeaning. We won't have it. And because if we don't, it's just going to go to hell in a handbasket, and then you're going to have more crap because somebody's going to snap because you're fostering that kind of environment, and we can't foster that kind of environment. And what's happened here, and I've seen a result of this rigged system, is a systemic abuse of power based on a comparative advantage. I call it the Euro Coolie Bully. You see, in Europe, they have different laws. For example, it's illegal to say the Holocaust didn't happen in Europe. Here, you can talk that horseshit, but we say, but Americans stand up and say, no, you're wrong, and I won't have that because we don't need regulations to do that. Well, in Europe, they have these regulations. They're regulated much more. There's not a total free market system. And so that example, so often when we have a European manager come to this country, they'll take advantage of the naivete or the complicity or the actual congeniality of the Americans, and they will be a bully, a coolie bully. And they're good at building these wonderful, chic things, but they're taking advantage of people's complicity. Now, a perfect example is a friend of mine works at a bakery, Vincent, and it's a French bakery. He had one of his bakers come in and say, right from France, he said, very congenial customer accepted an order that was off. He said, oh my God, these Americans are so nice. In France, nobody would accept this offer. Well, this order that was screwed up, the Americans said it's not the end of the world. They didn't make a big deal about it because they knew that they could be working at the bakery or flipping burgers or lose their money or be on the streets because we don't have that economic safety net. So we're more congenial. But if this is being taken advantage of in such a fashion that that people are getting abused because you can have an abusive system where someone from abroad is not integrating into the American ideal of being congenial, but rather holding on to old world values of being a bit of a hard ass, and they can do certain things. And like I said, for example, Gail was forced to work a double shift because the manager was just so berating. Well, you can't have that, and that's the beginning of that's a result of this kind of rigged system that we tolerate. Well, we can't tolerate it, and I have another method for handling these, what I call coolie bullies, or people who are abusive, and I'll tell you how in a minute with a movie.